Eon for Jesus! Yeah, we stand together in faith and hope.
My name is Abu Anish, and I was born in a small city in Iran. My life looked ordinary from the outside, maybe even blessed. I had a family that loved me deeply, a home filled with warmth, and a community that cared for each other. My father was a strict man, teaching discipline, honor, and devotion to God. My mother, gentle and kind, reminded me always to show patience, compassion, and love. Together, they shaped my early understanding of the world, of right and wrong, and of devotion to God. Religion was part of every day. I prayed 5 times a day, fasted during Ramadan, and attended the mosque regularly. I memorized verses from the Quran, learned stories of the prophets, and recited prayers faithfully. Outwardly, I followed all the rules. I wanted to be a good son, a good student, and a respected member of my community. But inside, I felt something missing, a quiet emptiness I could not explain. Even as a child, I began asking questions. Why do some people seem peaceful while others struggle with anger or sadness? Why is life sometimes unfair? What is the purpose of all these rules and rituals? I often sat alone, sometimes in the courtyard, sometimes under the walnut tree near our home, reflecting quietly. I whispered small, unsure prayers, hoping someone somewhere was listening. These moments became my refuge, my secret space to think freely, away from the expectations of the world. Life at home was structured. My father reminded me that honor and obedience were the foundations of a good life. My mother emphasized love, patience, and understanding. My teachers and neighbors reinforced these lessons. I listened, I obeyed, but the curiosity inside me grew louder with each passing year. I noticed small signs of goodness and courage in the world around me, acts that did not always fit the rules I had been taught. A neighbor forgiving someone, a friend helping quietly, a teacher showing unexpected kindness. These moments fascinated me. One day, a relative returned from a distant city. She spoke of Christians she had met, people who prayed, studied scripture, and lived with a joy and peace that seemed unshakable. I listened carefully, my curiosity stirring, but I was also afraid. Christianity was not accepted in our community. I had been warned it was dangerous to stray from tradition. Yet her story stayed with me. Could there be a way to know God that I had never imagined? Could love, forgiveness, and hope truly exist outside the world I knew? I began secretly searching for answers. I would find small books or pamphlets about Jesus, hidden away or passed quietly by someone I trusted. I read them under the covers at night, careful that no one saw. The words filled me with wonder, but also fear. What if someone discovered them? What would my family think? Could I betray them if I allowed myself to believe in something new? The questions made my heart race, but I could not stop reading. In those quiet hours, I began to notice changes in myself. Even though I was afraid, I felt a warmth in my chest, a gentle hope I had never known. The stories of Jesus spoke of love, forgiveness, and mercy in ways that resonated deeply. I realized that I longed for more than obedience and ritual. I wanted a personal connection with God, something real that could guide, comfort, and fill the emptiness in my heart. At the same time, guilt and doubt followed me constantly. Was I wrong to feel this curiosity? Was I betraying my family or culture? I often cried quietly, torn between the life I had always known and the possibility of something greater. But I could not silence the longing inside me. Every act of kindness I saw, every story of love or courage, reminded me that there was a truth I needed to find. By my early teens, I had developed a private routine of reflection and study. I would hide books about Jesus under my pillow, read scripture late at night, and pray softly when I thought no one could hear. These moments became my lifeline, a small flame of hope in a world that demanded conformity. I began to understand that faith was not about ritual alone, it was about the heart, about courage, about seeking truth even in secrecy. Looking back, I see that these early years shaped everything that was to come. The longing I felt, the curiosity I nurtured, the moments of secret reflection planted, seeds that would grow into a faith, strong enough to guide me. Through fear, danger, and uncertainty, the journey had only begun, but even then, I knew the path I was stepping onto would change my life forever. My curiosity about God became impossible to ignore. The questions that had lingered in my heart since childhood grew louder. Why do some people live with peace while others are full of fear? Is there more to life than simply following rules? Can love, forgiveness, and hope really exist beyond what I have been taught? I began observing the world more closely. I noticed small acts of kindness everywhere. A neighbor forgiving someone who had wronged them. A teacher helping a struggling student without expecting anything in return. A friend comforting someone quietly in pain. These moments puzzled me. How could people show such love and courage? Where did it come from? My heart ached to understand. Then one day, a relative returned from a city far from ours. She spoke of Christians she had met, people who prayed, studied scripture, and lived with joy and peace that seemed unshakable. Her stories lit a spark in me, but they also frightened me. I had been taught that Christianity was foreign and dangerous. Yet, I could not forget the idea that there was a way to know God that I had never imagined. I began secretly exploring. Whenever I could, I found small books or pamphlets about Jesus. I hid them under my pillow or in the corners of my room. At night, when everyone was asleep, I would read. The stories filled me with wonder, but fear never left completely. What if someone finds these books? What will my family think? Am I betraying everything I have been taught? Despite fear, I felt something new stirring in my heart. A quiet hope and a gentle sense that I was not alone. I began whispering prayers, unsure of what to say but desperate to connect with God. Sometimes, I felt a warmth in my chest, a feeling that someone was listening. Other times, doubt and anxiety returned. But the spark of curiosity and longing would not fade. The more I read, the more I realized that simply following rules could not satisfy the emptiness inside me. I wanted a personal relationship with God, a faith that guided my heart, gave me hope, and filled the longing I had carried since childhood. I longed to experience love and forgiveness in a way I had never known. At the same time, I reflected on the lives of people around me. I saw courage and love in small, unexpected ways, kindness to strangers, patience in difficult moments, selfless acts of care. I began to understand that faith is more than ritual. It is a way of living. It is courage to do good, hope to trust in God, and love that extends beyond oneself. Slowly, I began to understand the meaning of courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to move forward even when afraid. Each night, as I read, prayed, and reflected, I felt a quiet strength growing inside me. Even in fear, I felt hope. Even in doubt, I felt a desire for truth. One of the most important lessons I learned during this time was that faith begins in the heart, not in public displays. I could not speak openly about my curiosity, but I could nurture it privately. Each night, as I hid away with books and whispered prayers, I felt the first real stirrings of a relationship with God. By the time I reached my mid-teens, I knew that the longing in my heart could not be ignored any longer. I could no longer settle for a life that felt empty or routine. I needed to follow this spark of faith, even if it meant walking carefully, quietly, and secretly. I had begun the first steps of a journey that would require courage, patience, and unwavering trust. Looking back, I can see that these years were some of the most important in my life. They taught me patience, secrecy, courage, and the power of hope. I discovered that faith can take root even in fear, and that God's presence can be felt even in the darkest, most uncertain moments. This was the time when my heart began to open fully to Jesus. The curiosity of my childhood had grown into a desire for truth, love, and a relationship with God. And though I had not yet taken the step of fully following Him, I knew that the next stage of my journey would require bravery and careful devotion. The search had begun, and it would lead me to a life I could never have imagined. The day I decided to fully follow Jesus was one of the most important moments of my life. I remember sitting alone in my room, the soft light of a single lamp casting shadows across the walls. My heart was pounding, my mind full of fear, and yet, a quiet certainty had begun to grow inside me. I whispered my first true prayer of commitment, not the words I had memorized at the mosque, but words that came straight from my heart. I told God that I wanted to follow Him, that I wanted to live by His truth, and that I trusted Him with my life, even though I knew the path would be dangerous. I could not tell anyone. In Iran, being a Christian could bring judgment, isolation, or even imprisonment. My faith had to be hidden. I continued to participate in family rituals, attend mosque prayers, and live outwardly as the obedient son, brother, and student everyone expected. But inwardly, my life had completely changed. Every thought, every prayer, every act of reflection was now centered on Jesus. The first months were the hardest. Living a hidden life required constant awareness. Every conversation had to be measured, every action carefully considered. I felt isolated at times, longing for someone to share my excitement, my questions, my fears. But I also began to discover the quiet strength that comes from trusting God and persevering in secrecy. I realized that faith does not require recognition. It requires devotion, patience, and courage. It was during this time that I discovered a small underground house church. A friend, who I trusted deeply, invited me to a meeting in a private home. Only a few people attended, all of them cautious and discreet. They prayed together, shared stories from Scripture, and encouraged one another. I remember feeling a warmth I had never felt before. Here were people who shared my longing, my curiosity, and my desire to follow Jesus, and yet, they too had to live in secrecy. I began attending these gatherings regularly. At first, I was shy and fearful, afraid of making a mistake or being discovered. But the more I participated, the more my confidence grew. I listened to other stories, shared my own experiences carefully, and learned how to pray and study Scripture deeply. I realized that faith grows not only through private reflection, but also through community, even if that community must remain hidden from the world. As I became more involved, I started mentoring new believers who were timid or fearful. Many of them had questions, doubts, and fears similar to mine. I encouraged them to pray quietly, trust God in secret, and be patient with themselves. Together, we learned that courage does not mean the absence of fear. Courage means acting faithfully despite fear. We supported one another, prayed for one another, and shared the small victories of our hidden faith. Outside the house church, I also began serving others quietly. I helped families in need, visited the sick, and offered guidance to those struggling with despair. These acts of service were never public. I did not seek recognition or praise. I learned that ministry is not about being seen. It is about serving faithfully and spreading God's love, even in ways that may never be noticed. Each small act of kindness strengthened not only my heart, but also the hearts of those around me. Fear, however, never completely left me. I was always aware of the risks of a neighbor noticing unusual behavior, a family member asking questions, authorities monitoring religious activity. I learned to plan carefully. Meetings were held in different homes, often with only a few people at a time. We used secure technology to share Christian podcasts, videos, and messages with trusted friends. Every step was cautious, yet guided by faith. Through all of this, my faith grew stronger. I saw timid believers gain confidence. I saw families begin to open their hearts to hope. I learned that even in secrecy, faith could transform lives. I realized that my life was no longer just about me. It was about guiding others, offering support, and planting seeds of courage and love in a society that often discouraged such faith. Looking back, I can see that this period of my life was one of immense growth. I learned patience, humility, and courage. I discovered the beauty of quiet devotion and the power of service. I understood that faith is not always visible, yet it can have a profound impact on the world around us. Every secret prayer, every hidden act of love, every moment of courage mattered even if no one else could see it. The life I lived during these years was challenging, but it was also deeply fulfilling. I knew I was walking a path few would understand, a path that required secrecy, patience, and unwavering trust. Yet, I felt alive in a way I had never felt before. I was no longer searching. I had found Jesus, and He was now at the center of every thought, action, and decision. This chapter of my life taught me that faith often begins in the shadows. It grows quietly, secretly, in moments of reflection, prayer, and service. And even in fear, faith can bring courage, inspire hope, and transform lives. As the years passed, my faith grew deeper, and I began to see the larger purpose of my journey. Following Jesus was no longer only about me. It was about guiding others, planting seeds of hope, and nurturing a community that could grow quietly but courageously. I realized that even in the shadows, faith could shine and transform lives. I began taking more responsibility within our underground house church. At first, I merely listened, prayed, and supported others. But gradually, I found myself mentoring new believers, offering guidance, and teaching them how to pray, study scripture, and serve safely in a society that would not accept our faith. Leadership was not easy. It required patience, discernment, and courage. One wrong word, one careless action, could put everything at risk. But I learned to trust God, to pray for wisdom, and to act with humility, to ensure the safety and growth of our small community. I began forming circles of trust. A few reliable believers were trained to mentor others. This way, knowledge, guidance, and encouragement could reach more people safely. Every believer we guided could go on to touch more lives, spreading hope, love, and courage quietly but powerfully. I witnessed timid believers gain confidence, families opening their hearts to faith, and acts of kindness quietly rippling through our neighborhoods. Each small victory reminded me that faith, even hidden, could grow and transform lives. At the same time, I continued balancing my outward life with my inner devotion. I attended mosque prayers with my family, participated in cultural traditions, and fulfilled every expectation of my life in society. Outwardly, nothing had changed, but inwardly, my life was completely devoted to Jesus. Every decision, every prayer, every act of love or service was guided by faith. I learned the importance of discretion, careful planning, and trust skills essential not only for my safety but for the safety of others. I also realized that faith requires action, not just belief. I helped families in need, visited the sick, and offered guidance to those struggling with despair. These acts were quiet, often unnoticed, but they mattered deeply. The ministry is not always public. The greatest impact often comes from service done without recognition. Each act of love strengthened not only those I helped but also my own faith. I began to see that courage and hope are contagious. Even the smallest gesture can shine a light in darkness. Reflecting on my journey, I can now see the triumphs and the challenges clearly. Young believers were growing in confidence and courage. Families who had felt hopeless were beginning to find hope. Our small community, once timid and fearful, was learning to stand firm in faith despite the dangers around us. I realized that the path of secrecy, though difficult, was not wasted. It was fertile ground for growth, transformation, and love. Even fear never left completely. I remained aware of the risks of someone discovering our gatherings, technology being monitored, or family members asking questions. But I learned that fear does not have to paralyze. Courage is acting faithfully despite fear. Hope is continuing to serve even when the world cannot see. Love shines even in hidden ways. Through patience, prayer, and careful planning, I saw that faith could flourish even in the most difficult circumstances. Over time, I realized that my journey had a purpose far beyond myself. My life was not only about survival or personal growth. It was about creating a ripple effect of faith, hope, and courage. Every person I mentored, every act of service I performed, every prayer I offered, had the potential to transform lives in ways I could not always see. I understood that hidden faith could be powerful, enduring, and impactful. Looking back, I am grateful for every challenge, every moment of fear, and every act of quiet devotion. These experiences shaped me into the person I am today. I learned that living in the light of faith often requires walking in the shadows, that courage grows through quiet acts of devotion, and that love can shine even when unseen. I understand now that a life of faith is not always visible, but its impact can be eternal. Today, I continue my journey with hope, prayer, and service. I mentor believers, support families, and guide new followers in secret, always aware of the risks but trusting in God's protection and wisdom. I know that every small act of courage and faith contributes to something greater, something lasting. The hidden victories, the quiet acts of love, and the courage to stand firm in faith, all of these are proof that even in secrecy, God's light can shine. This is my story, a story of faith, fear, courage, and hope. It is the story of a hidden believer in Iran, living in the shadows, yet walking in the light of Jesus. I hope it inspires others to seek truth, to trust God, and to act with love, even when the world does not see. The journey may be difficult, but the rewards, courage, faith, and the transformation of lives are eternal.